Welcome to Q&A, Questions Need Answers. I'm your host, James Munch II. Most people know me as Munch. And on this show, we talk about community, culture, and politics. This is an honest conversation that we're having to get the community, talking and thinking critically about the issues. So today we have none other than Miss Thera Johnson.
Thera Johnson.
All right. Write-in candidate.
Write-in candidate. We're going to talk about
for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, District 1.
Absolutely.
All right. So on this show, we typically start the show with, getting to know you, know what I'm saying, and knowing where you're from, your experiences, different things of that nature. So tell the people about yourself.
Okay. So I was born and raised right in Miami Gardens. I grew up there my entire life. I went to elementary school right at Crestview. I went to then at the time Parkway Middle School, but then they closed that down and turned it into like a technical center or something like that. Not while the time that I was there, but then I finished out 8th grade at Norland Middle. My mom wanted us to go to Norland.
I'm about to say.
Yeah.
You came to Norland.
Yeah, I came to Norland.
We was rivals for the longest.
Yes.
You came to Norland. I went to Norland.
So I went over to Norland for 8th grade because she wanted us to transition easier. So I did Norland 8th grade, and then I went right over to Norland Senior High School. That's where I graduated in 2000. Growing up as a kid, I was a big track runner. So that kept us involved, active. My mom always kept us in something going on. So I ran track.
Who you ran track for?
I ran track at Norland.
Norland?
Coach Riley was our
it
coach.
Anybody? Did you run track like in the youth league or anything?
Yes,
that?
we ran track in the youth league. Ours was neighborhood track club. I ran with 2. I ran with Miami-Dade Lake Track Club, which inadvertently became the head coach there. He inadvertently became my father-in-law at some point along the history. So we'll get into all that. But so Miami-Dade Lake Track Club was one of the biggest track clubs at the time in Miami Gardens. And then my mom also put us in neighborhood track club, which was a smaller track club. So it wasn't as many kids and things like that. My mom liked that vibe a little better. She was actually really good friends with one of the ladies who was starting up the program, and they needed kids. So we went over there and we did neighborhood. But we did AAU our entire, youth years. We did that right at Rolling Oaks Park. Every night, every afternoon. I cheered at North Dade Optimist. I cheered at Scott Lake starting out. I cheered at Scott Lake, Ives Estates, and then I ended up went towards 7th, 8th grade at North Dade, and I cheered there with like Coach Kathy's, Coach T's of the world, and that was a great experience. So all of that kind of molded me into who I am today. I cheered at Norland Senior High School. We have a big cheerleaders association there. Coach Rowe, amazing person, very good, influential woman figure in my life. And, once I graduated from school, I went to FIU and I ran track there. I got a track scholarship for Florida International University. And that's when I got my degree, did all of that stuff. Those 4 years really shaped me. Also, I got a degree working with people with special needs, basically. And I think that's what started my journey as somebody who wants to give back, who wants to be a person who helps others and helps people who can't help themselves. So after Florida International University, I've done a lot of different jobs leading up to. I did Department of Juvenile Justice. So I did some juvenile justice work with children and youth, convicted youth that were actually sent to programs, level 8s, level 6s, things like that. So I helped them reintegrate back into the community, trying to make sure that they stay on track, get back in school, family structure. A lot of times that was a big part of their stories, the lack in the family structure. So just getting in with the families, doing that type of community work, as well as being, paid to do it. But just being out there doing programs for youth, again, trying to get them to see that a life of crime or drugs, alcohol, those aren't the way to go, which then led me to start coaching track. So I started coaching track. I've coached with Strong Arm Track Team. I've also coached with Norland Senior High School. I've helped a lot of athletes. Actually, it's funny, I work with one of my former athletes right now. Shout out to Coach B. So, it's just one of those things where you just try to make things come full circle. So I was given to a lot as a kid. My mom was a single mother raising us, and we had a lot of influential people in our lives trying to help us do things, making sure we stayed on the straight and narrow. And then it just made me want to do the same thing for my community, my youth. So I coached track for a number of years. My son is 20 now. So he was maybe 5 when I started coaching. because I really kind of like started coaching him. But at the same time, it was more of a situation where we were coaching with Strong On, we were coaching with Scott Lake Track Club, and just bringing up a lot of those youth. So when my son did come along, it just put me back in the arena. So my father-in-law was my track coach growing up, and then he became a coach that, you know, mentored me and helped me to understand the nuances of giving back and giving the community. You know, this was a guy who, you know, James Jones, he was a guy who took money out of his pockets, and we're not talking about $5 or $10. We're talking about $300-$400 that to take kids out of town when their parents didn't have it, and making sure that they got those experiences, leaving our communities, you know, not just seeing that the world is our 3-mile block radius, but seeing places, you know, we've gone through cornfields and, you know, places we would have never gone if had we not been running track. So just being able to do it like that and give back, and then just led me to want to just become an elected official, work with the community, do more, make change. And that's how I got here today for District 1.
So what was take us through the decision to actually, you know, become a candidate for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and why you chose the school district,
okay,
opposed to any other
position. In 2020, I ran for seat 3 with City of Miami Gardens. That's kind of like started everything. So the 6-year gap just came in where I was like, you know, the next time I run, I want to be sure that I'm ready, because, you know, the whole election process, it's one thing to want to run, but in order to do that, you have to get elected to do so.
Talk about that. I mean,
yeah.
you can go in on that a little bit.
Listen, yeah, it's a lot. It's financially, you know, and cumbersome, and you have to be ready to make sure that you can reach the voters properly and they can hear your voice. So I would say 6 years ago, we didn't have as many forums like this. You may have had a few, very far in between, but it was a fee or something involved. So just being able to get out to the candidates, talk to them, let them hear my voice, let them understand where I'm coming from. I think that was more impromptu in 2020. I was just like, you know,
it was in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was the middle of the pandemic. And to be honest, that same year I lost my sister-in-law and I lost my brother. So a lot happened in that time. And I said, you know what, the next time I do this, I want to be really ready, because I know who I am internally, but the voters have to see that. And until you're able to really get your voice out, I know people are like, oh, we give y'all money and you spend it on this and then we never see you again. But the reality is, without having those financial donations or people being able to support you financially, it does make it hard to reach the voters. So, and then, you know, that's why money is the root of all evil. But it comes into play when you want to get out a message, and voters have to see you, know you, understand
ads, you got to spend money on ads.
Listen,
to get the poster boards.
Oh my gosh.
All the printed materials you need.
Nothing costs under $100 for any one single thing.
Yeah.
So you're talking about flyers that, you know, people say, oh, y'all throw all the trash and flyers and this. You know, those things are really expensive. So we don't want to throw them away. But it's just one of those things where it's just a part of the process. So when I did it in 2020, I said to myself, I want to do it again. I want to do it again. But then again, I wanted to do it right. I'm not the type of person who invests time in something if I'm not going to do it up to my standard. So when I saw the seat come open for District 1, I pondered upon it, and I just woke up one night and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I think this is my grand reawakening. And because I love students, I love kids, I love the youth, that's really my, you know, that's my grounds. When you're on the city council and things like that, you're dealing with the adults, you're dealing with the seniors, the this, and you're dealing with a lot of different things. Different things. Correct. Yeah. But with the school board, you're dealing with the schools. You know, I don't have to worry about, you know, economic development or trash cans or things like that as a city council member. But with the schools, I want to make sure that the kids have the proper curriculum, the teachers have the proper salaries, anything that I can do to help bridge that gap, like Dr. Gallen has done. You know, he set a very good example in District 1, and the next person is really going to have some huge shoes to fill. And I felt I would be a viable option to fill those shoes and take our District 1 into the future. Not leave us in the background of what's going on, because if you look around the world, what's going on with education is like top tier. It's really some next level spaceship, Star Wars movie type stuff going on with education that people are learning and how we are doing things. And our kids, unfortunately, sometimes of color, of different ethnicities, of different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, they're getting left behind. So I want to be a pioneer, a pillar in doing things directly for the kids.
So we talked about 2020 and now it's 2026. What are some of the things that you did in that middle period between that time?
I have a non-for-profit organization, legacy family-based consulting firm with my sister, Akiva Ford, and we've done various cleanups. I do a lot of stuff during Black History Month primarily because we want to get the word out for Black community and who we are as African Americans. I also do a lot of different things culturally. So we do something for Hispanic Heritage Month every year. We do tutoring services. We do family-based, again, consulting. She works in the foster care system. Her exact title is eluding me right now, but she works in the foster care system. So family unification, family reunification, working with parents to make sure that they don't lose their children when they have come across those situations, and also getting with parents who can't have children or, for whatever reason, maybe don't want to birth biological children, but they want to help out children who don't have homes and things of that nature. So we do a lot of that type of work with families in the community.
Can you go through, because you're a write-in candidate.
Correct.
Can you talk about that process and how do you become a write-in candidate as opposed to somebody else who's another way? So
basically what it is, and I've been saying, I was talking to Janae was talking to me the other day, so I said I'm gonna do an op-ed piece about writing candidacy because people really don't understand it. They don't know what that is, but it's also another just misconception that we've developed as people, not knowing things and not understanding why things are. So when you run for office, you have to do a qualifying fee. Some fees are nominal, $100, $200, but then some fees go up into the thousands of dollars. The school board fee is one of those fees. It's a pretty pricey fee when you talk about the grand scheme of things, but I think it's 4% of the salary for the position, because for the school board, you actually get paid a salary through Miami-Dade County. So because of that position having a $55,000 salary, the write-in fee was about $2,200, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember on top. So also the next part of that is because of that fee, and then they only gave us a 1 week pretty much window to qualify, where most candidates for the seat, you have like 90 days, I think, to qualify. There's various rules within Florida elections. So they have to give you your ballots. It's 90 days or 60 days in front of election. They have rules for everything for qualifying periods. So because Dr. Gallin withdrew from the seat before it was actually up for re-election, which would have been in 2028, it became a special election. So for a special election, they give you a small window to qualify. So basically you have to come up with $2,200 in a week. Some people can do that. That wasn't something that I was able to do, but I didn't want to also then say, no, I'm not going to do it because I don't have the money to do it, because I don't feel like that's a reason not to do things. The spirit moved me to want to be a part. So I said, you know what, if I do what I need to do as a candidate, as a write-in candidate, then who knows what can happen. Some people pay $10,000, $20,000 for an election and still don't get the voters because they've never been out there doing the work, been out there in the community. But I was pretty confident in my work that I do on a daily basis out in the community, especially in the District 1 area, that I knew people knew me, and I knew people knew what I stand for, what I'm about. So I went with the write-in candidate option. It's never the ideal place because people do go in And, you know, like they say, people going in bubbling any answer and this. So it makes it harder. It does make it harder. It does make it harder when a person can't see your name and they don't know who they're voting for. But I think I put out enough information about the write-in candidate process for them to understand that you're voting for me. It's just you don't see my name on the ballot. That's all.
So your name is not officially on the ballot.
My name is not
official. So they have to literally write it in.
Yeah. There's a space for the write-in, and then they just bubble in. It's just like any other the spot. So, you know, you have the bubble in portion, and then you have the person's name. And the bubble in portion is what is scanned and what casts the votes. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody's there reading names. They're just, it's like a Scantron or like a test, anything that you would use. So you process it through the machine, it casts the ballot. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. So when you bubble in that write-in candidate line, it's a vote for me. So let's just say you were there and you forgot how to spell my name. You wrote it wrong. That's not going to disqualify the vote. It's the bubbling of the, exactly. And that's for anybody. And like, if you go in there and you bubble in, like, let's say it is the school board ballot and you bubble in multiple, it would just disqualify that ballot. It wouldn't even count it. So you have to do it properly, or it doesn't count, or you can do it, you know, again, just by bubbling in that particular spot, and that cast a vote for me because I was the only qualified candidate, write-in candidate for this election.
That's interesting because I never, I think in my lifetime had a real write-in candidate. So that's why it's a new process for me. Yeah, correct. I know it's possible because I've heard about it, but you know, it's one thing to hear about it, but it's another thing to actually like see it in real time in real life. Correct. So.
And it's not a lot of education about it. So that is another thing I want to do, educate people about the write-in candidate and just understanding who you're voting for. Because if you are just going in there voting for anybody, you know, that's not the most strategic way to do things either. It's better than not voting at all, but you should still know who you're voting for. And if you have a candidate that you're passionate about, you'll know who they are and what they're doing, and you'll vote for them.
What are some of your priorities or some things that you're looking forward to being a school board member in District 1?
The first thing I think we need in the school board is more diversity and more transparency. We do have different ethnic members on the board, but I think a new vision, a new leadership does need to meet with the board, and that will help us to regain control over what's going on today versus what's going on 10, 15, 20 years ago when some of the members were elected or have been sitting in seats for many years. So I think I would bring about a new level of transparency. That's my biggest priority. A lot of times we don't know what's going on because we can't find the information. And when you go on the school board website, you can look for things if you know what you're looking for. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know how to find it. And we need to make things a lot more transparent. And parents should know exactly what their kids are doing. They should know exactly where the dollars are being spent. Just even community members, we should know where our dollars are being spent, because our property taxes and the things that are being taken away from us, or not to say taken away from us, but the things that are being,
property taxes get used for education.
For education in our districts. So I want to know where my dollars are going, and I want to see what they're being used for versus not being able to see that, not being able to understand exactly where our money is going. So that's my biggest priority, just more transparency across the board. And then as far as the schools directly are concerned, making sure that we're not closing schools and we're getting our enrollment back up, because we've lost in the last 10 years or so, we've lost over 100,000 students in Dade County Public Schools. So when you divide that by 9 districts, we are one of those districts that have really suffered as far as enrollment decreases and loss of teachers, good teachers. I know for certain some that are have left, and they were amazing teachers. They went elsewhere, they went different places because their passion is teaching, but you have to be able to feed your family. You have to be able to live. And, Miami is the most expensive city in the country as of this year. So we have to do better. And we have to make sure that our teachers can feed themselves, their families take care of themselves. So that's definitely another priority of mine, securing dedicated funding sources, because it's good to give them a little raise here or there if we get a grant or we get an extra stipend or something. But we have to clean up the budget so we can secure a dedicated funding source. So the teachers, because without them, what are schools? You know?
Yeah, so you talked about transparency, education, and amongst a few other things. But so Dr. Gallen, I believe, did a good job of trying to get the not as well as the schools involved, but also getting the community involved. Correct. With the parents and the kids. So what's your plans to get the more parents involved and the extended family and whatnot?
We're going to have Jordan releases at all of the school sites, so then the parents will come there, they're going to line up and participate. But no, we want to...
I think that would have got them about 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Listen, whatever we got to do, iPhone releases, whatever, but we have to get the parents there, because the parents are instrumental in using their voices to make change, and we have to empower them to be able to come and do that. So, Dr. Gallen was doing his town hall meetings, so I would definitely continue that, maybe make them a little more frequently at different school sites, increase that. Just definitely reaching out to the parents more, giving more face-to-face communication. We want to get more kids involved in the school board, so increasing that program where we do have the student advisory, but you have one student or two students here or there. But I want to make it a busload of kids coming and seeing what's going on, participating in the conversation, so we as school board members know what they want, know what they need, because I think a big part of it is us telling the schools what we think they should get versus them being there every day. They're in the trenches. They know what's going on. They know what they're lacking. They know what they need, and being more of a voice for them to hear from us. And again, it's just one of those transparency things. I don't want parents calling an office where nobody ever answers the phone. And that's happening a lot in Dade County Public Schools. Mm-hmm. You can't reach a person. You send an email, you never get a reply back. And it is causing parents a big distaste, and they don't like it. And that's why they're leaving. That's why they're going elsewhere. They're going to charter schools and places where it's smaller environments. So when you walk in the door, everybody knows who you are. We have to bring that community back to the schools. Every parent, every teacher, you should have your roster. You should go on the school website, know exactly who your teachers are, your parents are. Quite a few of the schools have that, but we want to make sure that we're having more family nights, more family programs, bringing the parents out. Food always does the trick, bringing them out, community, even if it's potlucks. So it's not something that may be directly coming out of the budget, but maybe our cultural programs that we have at the schools, if it's cooking, culinary, whatever the case may be, we bring them out, we have an event, and we get the parents to come out and talk to us in more, like you say, a relaxed setting like this, not just always in a meeting where they're not talking, they're just listening. What
are some, you mentioned earlier about 100,000 kids leaving the school system, public school system. So what are some things, and you talked about it just recently, but what are some initiatives that you have to kind of not no initiatives, because you already talked on that. So let's talk about what is your perspective on why the kids are leaving?
School choice is a big part of why they're leaving. Recently, in the times that we're in now, within the last 4 years, the ICE, the immigration, it's a various number of reasons, especially in District 1, because we do have a very diverse ethnic group of students where you have African American primarily, and then you have Hispanic, you have Caucasian, you have Haitian populations. So we have a lot of different cultural ethnicities in the schools in District 1. So we're targeting those things. So because of that, we have to do initiatives that are going to directly reflect those schools and what's going on. But school choice is a big thing. Parents want to choose, and a lot of times smaller settings, more open transparency. They like those things, and they've left Dade County Public Schools for a lack of those things. So we got to attract them back by giving them what they're asking for. We have to open our ears, close our mouths, and work for the students, work for the parents, work for the teachers. And that's what I plan to do on the school board once I'm elected.
The education system is supposed to nurture and develop our kids, right? When the parents ain't there, is you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And how are we getting those kids prepared, you know what I'm saying, for the real world, right? And so what is your outlook on that to get the kids in District 1 prepared for careers or whatever they choose to do?
District 1 curriculum has a various diverse levels of programs. One of the schools, which Miami-Dade Tech is on that border. I don't think it actually is in District 1, but I think it might be attached because District 1, it has a very funny, all of the schools, they just have a very funny border and boundary. So even though it doesn't actually sit in, they lump it in as a part of District 1. And I'm almost certain that it is, but I'll double check on that one. But yeah, so we have the resources. We have the schools. You know, a lot of people get their CDLs. They get, I think, HVAC from Miami-Dade Tech. So that's a huge place to get kids career ready. The problem is, what are we doing at the individual school sites? So maybe making more programs, even if they're virtual or online, that the kids have more accessibility to trade programs, to entrepreneur services, financial literacy, getting them ready for understanding how do you purchase a home. Because 1 + 1 = 2. But if I don't know how to add 2 and make it 4 and then make it 8, then I'm going to have a problem when I get into real life. And a lot of times the kids aren't being taught those things. Like I think I heard someone say kids don't know how to write checks anymore. And I'm like, who writes checks anymore for things? Yeah. When was the last time you wrote a check for something?
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
So we have to understand where we are today. Yeah. Not what kids were learning. And although cursive is important and we need to learn that, but guess what? When I sign my mortgage papers, it's going to be on a sign it doc online on a computer. And I need to understand how I do those things. I need to understand how do I talk to a lawyer about mortgage and purchasing homes and building real estate portfolio. We're not teaching the kids a well-rounded curriculum. And I know that we are tied to certain things by law. So they have to learn math, science, English. They have to learn those core courses. But the unfortunate reality is Miami-Dade County Public School is held to a different requirement than charter schools. So some things that we have to work on is how can we make our curriculum to reflect exactly what it is that's going to stay between the laws of the State Board of Education in Tallahassee, but also prepare our kids for the future. And it really is going to start more than likely in Tallahassee, but it's going to start with the board working together to put those things on the ballots, to put those things on the boards and call to action and say, hey, I have 4 schools in District 1 that have no entrepreneur programs. What can we do? We have to look at the budget and see how we can shift money, because if we're spending $1 million on paper and all of the kids are doing everything online, why are we spending $1 million on paper? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have to think about what we're spending, why, how is it effective, how is it efficient, and then the things that we can do to change that, so then that way we're meeting the needs of students today, not trying to meet the needs of the students 20 years ago, because everything pretty much is either online, electronic, technology. So we have to advance those areas and stop killing trees, doing things that aren't necessary, that we don't need to have, and things that can be fixed if we just work at it.
I asked another candidate this, and I asked you this. I know because we, at the bookstore, we had a bookstore, right? So literacy matters, right?
Absolutely.
And we also understand some of the intricacies within the school board, right? So the school board may put out that they have a A or B grade. I can't remember what it is. I think it's like an A grade right now, right?
Yes.
But understanding like the literacy, that doesn't mean the literacy in District 1 or District 2 is an A grade.
Absolutely not.
So how do you intend to boost those literacy rates compared, so that we can be on the same level as what the school board, I guess, averages across the board? Because I was told that we're lower in the inner city schools and the inner city districts than, all the other districts.
Absolutely. So the A grade system, it's a ranking system. So every part of that system you get a point for. So let's just say literacy is a point. So if you have 70% or out of your 100% of students go up, you get, let's say, 7 points because you're at 70. And again, this is all on the state of Florida website to help you understand how the grades go. Just ask ChatGPT, how are the grades ranked? And it'll help you really get a picture of what A means. Because with the school board, A doesn't mean 190%. It means something totally different. So when it comes to literacy in certain areas, what they do is they factor in not only the top tier students, because that skews the points, they average the bottom tier. So if the bottom tier were to make gains, let's say the lowest, let's say Munch is at a first grade reading level, but he's in fourth grade. But let's say you made gains that year to get up to, let's say, second grade level, they get points for that. So right now, where we stand with literacy and the grading system, across the board, kids aren't reading. Those foundational things. And I'll take it into this area, what I learned from a teacher, because I have children that go to school, the Miami-Dade schools. And then I have older children who have graduated, they've gone through. So it's almost like I've seen both sides of the coin. So I see what's happening 20 years ago or 15 years ago when my son was in school. And then I see what's happening now with my younger kids. I call them the littles now that they're in school. And one of the teachers, because I'm a very active parent, she showed me what a kindergartner has to read, and then what a first grader has to read, and then what a second grader has to read. And if you could even imagine, a first grader is reading I See Sam, and then a second grader has to read 3 paragraphs. There's a huge disparity in the learning. So that's why kids can't read. We have to start them on paragraph reading earlier. We're saying kindergarten, they can only do this or that, but are we pushing them towards anything? Are we pushing the curriculum to say, well, what happens when Munch shows up and he's 6 years old, but he can read 3 paragraphs, but I'm still giving him Sam can't see? That's the problem. And but then that all ties back into school choice, where you can go to a charter school, you can go other places, and they can do kind of whatever they want to do. But it is benefiting the kids in essence. But as Dade County schools, we have to fix that. We have to fix these huge learning gaps because most first graders, most kindergartners go into first grade not ready. And then most first graders go into second grade not ready. And then second grade is a big struggle year for parents, teachers, for everybody, because now they're trying to get them third grade ready to take a test. And really the problem lies in kindergarten and first grade, where they're not really increasing the curriculum where it needs to be so they can be a little bit more ready. So that's definitely one of the things that I would fight for. Again, working with our curriculum specialists, working with the individuals who set these curriculums, who buy the books, who purchase, from these companies that is showing why our kids can't read. And then you telling parents, it's on you to do this and it's on you to do that, which is true. I definitely wholeheartedly feel like the parents have to be involved. But I do also feel like the curriculum is very skewed for kindergarten and first grade, and it's affecting the kids overall. And that's why their learning gains are very low. And obviously in our Black communities, it's even worse because we don't have a lot of access to cultural things that maybe, Jenny may have over in Aventura, or she may have over in Miami Beach, where they can have the financial backing or financial structure from the home life that's giving them those things. So we want to make sure that all schools in District 1 are working up to a high standard, but it's going to start with changing some of the curriculum aspects.
So, simple question.
Go ahead.
Do you support the arts, and do you see the arts being do you see the arts helping in education, or have you witnessed arts being a helping aid in that process?
Absolutely. I absolutely support the arts. I support a lot of the new trends like STEM and STEAM and things of that nature. I think one thing I pride myself on being is a well-rounded individual. So that includes having other options and alternatives to learning. All kids don't learn the same. So whatever it might be that helps them or motivates them, I definitely think like dance and things like that should be more on the elementary school level. Right now you have music, you have PE, but there aren't a lot of dance programs or arts types programs. You have art class at some of the schools, which I'm learning now as well that's not even at every school. You know, you have art teachers going to different schools on different days of the week and things like that. And I get it, I understand it, but it still has to be a way where we can try to improve those circumstances so the kids are getting a lot more of what they need in a well-rounded manner, because all work and no play makes everybody dull, you know. So I think the kids would be more motivated to do a lot of things that they like to do in addition to doing the things that they have to do.
I say that because I grew up at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center just down the street, right? And so with that experience, I specifically in high school, I wasn't a big reader. You know what I'm saying? I could read very fluidly, right? I comprehended stuff. I was good, but I didn't apply myself, I would say, right?
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that got me into reading more was theater, right? Because you got to read the script, you got to act it out. I wasn't an actor. That wasn't my thing, but I did tech. So even in tech, we got to read the script. We got to see when the cues are going to come. We constantly got to read the script as the play is going, so we know where the cues hit.
Wow.
So that's why I asked you that question, because I thought about that. I was very active in music, and music helped me count quicker. You feel me? Because you think about it, you got four. If you're in 4/4 time, you got 4 beats in each measure.
Yes.
And because of the 4 beats, you got half. It teaches you more about fractions. You know what I'm saying? Because you got an eighth note, you got a half note, you got a quarter note. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely.
So so I started to get it a little bit more.
It's critical thinking, and I think a lot of what our kids are missing is critical thinking. A lot of them don't know how to think without saying, "Hey Siri" or "Hey Alexa," you know, to help them do things. And that's a big issue across the board with, you know, technology. It's a helpful thing. It's like a double-edged sword. You're either damned if you do, damned if you don't. So, but yeah, I tell my kids that all the time. I say critically think. And sometimes it does take alternative methods and means for kids to think. Yeah. And then it does help them in other areas.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
Miami-Dade County Public Schools, I think it's the third or the fourth largest budget at this point, right? And so I wanted to switch gears to talk about business, right? Okay. The business of the school board, right? Because I think a lot of times in these positions, we don't really get to talk about it. And you have a lot of money that contracts and things that need to move. And one of the issues that's been an issue in the school board has been minority contracts.
Okay.
Right? What's your stance on that, and how could you get? I also think it's another way to get the community involved, right? Absolutely. So what's your stance on getting the community involved as far as like being vendors of the school board and whatnot?
Okay. And it's funny you asked me that, because remember when we first sat down, that's the first thing I asked you, were you a vendor? Yeah. Because I know how that works with Miami-Dade County. I have experience dealing with that, working with contracted vendors. We do that quite a bit, because unfortunately, although we want to provide the service, we may not always be the expert in doing that. You know, I may want to go build a building, but I need to have a reliable, safe, contracted company to go do that. So I'm not going to send out one of my maintenance guys to go build stuff. We don't do, you know, we can't operate like that. But I think one of the best ways to do that is having more minority-owned trainings, more outreach, letting them understand what the business of the business is. And not just saying, okay, well, if you show up today, then we'll tell you what's going on. Having some like infomercial type of situations where they can go on YouTube, they can watch a video about it. Anybody can. Our students, teachers. I'm not sure, but I'll just talk from my own experience. But I've always said, you know, some of your most reliable vendors are right in the building. You know, why not allow the teachers to become vendors. They say it's a conflict of interest, but really when you look at it is you're giving your teachers the ability to do things that they're already experts at doing. And then they're able to pay for them because we have the money sitting there. Why wouldn't I give it to Munch when I already know he owns a bookstore? Why do I have to take my money somewhere else out of the community when we have things right here in the community? So we want to make sure that we're empowering business owners, reaching out, setting up those type of workshops, training so they know, making things easier. And I know they say, well, you know, if you want something you want to work hard for, working hard is one thing, but not being able to find a document that you need to sign up to be a business vendor, exactly like a checklist of exactly what you need, just making sure that those things are readily accessible to business owners. And like you said, just having forums where maybe we come into a space like this, one Thursday a month, people can meet, network, talk, speak. I'm here as a school board member. You can talk to me. You can ask me questions about being able to become a vendor. Because I think when we are reaching out to people who want to do things in our community, but they don't know how, we are more beneficial by teaching them how. So like they say, you can feed a man a fish eat for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, you know, the possibilities are endless. So we want to do that. And not only just, I say, for the community, but for our students. Mm-hmm. A lot of these kids are so talented in a lot of different things, but we're not opening up those doors for them like we should and like we need to. And that's another thing that I would certainly do if on the school board, you know, just figuring out how we can open up the doors so people can walk through them and have the opportunity. If you want the opportunity, you know, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. So we can put it out there, but unless you want to do it, but when you want to do it and you come to me and say, hey, I have this business, I want to be a vendor, what else do I need? I want to be able to give you that checklist, say, hey, do this, do that. If you don't have that CPA, here's a list of recommended CPAs. I'll say like a good organization is the Children's Trust. They're very good at that. They do a lot of funding, but they do a lot of workshops. They do a lot of meetings. They have a library of documents because a lot of times you have a business and you're operating and you're making a profit, but then what do you want to do to take it to the next level? You got to have insurance. You have to have funding sources, or like I say, that CPA, that accountant. You have to have a lawyer. So they help you to find all of those missing pieces and people who are already in the business of doing the things that you're looking for. And it just helps you to get the contracts, the vendorships, the grants, and all of the opportunities that are really out there, because there are a lot.
What is your stance? We're gonna take a step back. What's your stance on co-location?
You know, it is a non-negotiable. I don't see any reason why we would have K through 12 at a school site with two different schools. You know, just that alone is a lot. If you're functioning, you're set up that way, because we do have K through 12 sites, but when you're mixing almost like two different cultures in the same place and then expanding it to that, it's just a lot of ill-gotten factors that will come up, and when things hit the fan, somebody's going to have to pay the consequences, and it's usually going to be us as Miami-Dade County Public Schools, because we are the ones who are being held to the fire, unfortunately, versus the CEOs of the charter schools or the financial officers of the charter schools. And we want to, that's just, it's not something that we need to do. Now, the problem is, in full transparency, which is, I like to be honest, if it's a law, it's a law. But that's where this all starts and where we come here. We have to vote. We have to vote against these things, but we keep putting people in place and we're not really checking their background. You ask them to do something, but you have a background in something that's creating a big problem for us. Why would I vote you in the seat? Why would I vote you into office? Because if you already have an interest in our problem, what makes me think that you're not going to get on the board and continue to
vote on their interest? Correct.
And you will. It's inevitable. It is going to happen. And so that's why we have to educate ourselves. We have to know what's going on. We can't just vote on names and what we think. We have to really just, you know, and we have the time. Most elected officials start their campaigns a year in advance. So you have time to go and check and see who it is and what their background is and what's been going on with them, where they come from, what have they done. Oh, you've been on the school board, you've been on this, you've been on that, and we still have no change. What have you done to have change? It's just one of those things that we have to think about, because once Tallahassee puts it in the law, whether we like it or not, it's going to get done.
So I'm going to give you a chance to look into this camera and tell the people why they should vote for you.
Okay. You should vote for me, Thera Johnson, School Board Member, District 1, write-in candidate, because I have the educational background. I have the loyal, diligent, wanting to serve spirit and mentality. And I know that if once on the school board, I am going to vote in the best interest of the teachers, the students, and I'm going to make sure that we do our very best to serve our community in which the way that we are supposed to. I have no special interest. I have no background that dictates that I'm going to do anything but what it is that I say I'm going to do, which is to make District 1 schools a better place for parents to choose to send their students every day, create safe environments for them, and ensure that they are given the best level of educational success that we can possibly provide. So I'm here, I'm open, I'm ready to serve, I'm ready to work. Please reach out to me. Again, Thera Johnson, write-in candidate. I would love your support to earn your vote. So any questions that you may have, I'm here, I'm ready to work.
You heard it here first. I hope y'all got a well-rounded understanding of who Ms. Thera Johnson is. I hope that y'all go and check out all the videos that we have on YouTube of Q&A. You can also listen on Apple and Spotify for these episodes of all the episodes, okay? So whether you're in the gym, working out, or whatever you're doing around the house or wherever you're doing, we got ample enough resources for you to go listen to these candidates, find out everything that they're about. Follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Q&A, questions, the answers. Instagram, join Q&A, that's Q&A, the actual letters. And then Q&A, questions, the answers on Facebook. Check us out. See y'all later. Peace.